Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports Day Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Joe Hoyt, who are just coming off, as we're taping this, the Cowboys fiasco out of Jerry World Monday night. A game that the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals, which, is kind of what they do. They lose to the Cardinals at Jerry World, but usually that's with Kyler Murray at quarterback. This time it was Jacoby Brissett. I guess it doesn't really matter who the Cardinals quarterback is. They just can't beat them. And then, of course, Jerry Jones made a circus out of everything, even more than usual, with hints of trades and other things and announcements about the Stars playing out there in his palace. So it was a big night for Jerry, making all the rounds. But I guess let's start off first with just the game itself. Joe, how in the world is this team losing to the previously 2-5 Arizona Cardinals at home with a backup quarterback?
Yeah, I hate to paint it as something other than what it was, and that was a Cowboys failure again, right? But I will say this: the Cardinals were not that bad of a football team. They had a lot of close losses. They had 5 games they'd lost in a row, but it was against some good teams where they had some good competition. So this team that they played wasn't bad, right? And Jacoby Brissett had been playing pretty good ball for them. They might even have a quarterback competition there in Arizona moving forward a little bit and trying to figure that out. But realistically, it comes back to the main root of the problem that's been the thing for the Dallas Cowboys this entire season, and that's a defense that struggles mightily, that is inept, that needs so much work and help. And early on, they showed signs that maybe they'd be a little bit better. They were sending some blitzes. They were running a lot of 5-1 kind of front concepts, something that Dan Quinn used to run a lot. So I think that's one thing. Maybe Schottenheimer had a little bit of influence early on, was saying, hey, let's make some changes to kind of acquiesce to what kind of personnel we had. They had a lot of 3rd and longs they forced early on, but then you kind of saw the tone for the rest of the game. They weren't going to stop anyone on 3rd down. Arizona finished 7 of 13. It felt like they were 15 of 15 on 3rd down, and it didn't matter if it was 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 25. That the Cardinals could do whatever they wanted on 3rd down pretty much. The defense, once again, had a lot of big plays against them. And Evan can kind of attest this, I think, too. This was the lowest I saw the morale of players at halftime that I've seen all season. I use the word uninspired at halftime. And then that first defensive drive where they give up 75 yards in 3 plays and a touchdown. Jacoby Brissett's talking about how easy it was to score on them. I mean, think about that. A backup quarterback, that is talking about how easy it is to score on your defense. And I think that's kind of a testament to where they're at. Offense didn't do enough, right? But realistically, they were put in some positions once again, I think, where they were forcing things. And ultimately, that ended up being their downfall.
Kevin, I was on assignment out at the Cowboys game. You want to ask me how they lost?
Well, Evan, first of all, I think that people are going to have to get their heads wrapped around the fact that Mr. Baseball is out there, at Jerry World, where they don't play baseball. They play hockey out there, and they play
everything other than football out there, Kevin.
Yes, they do.
Actually, let me take that back. They play everything other than defense out there. Joe gave a very great and detailed explanation. For those with shorter attention spans, let me just say this: defense sucks. I mean, it was horrible, and I'm not surprised, but seeing it up close, they just for some reason it hit home even harder. And the thing that stuck out for me again was just how soft the zone coverage is, and how many times the Arizona did face 3rd and long in the first half, in particular when they took control of the game. I think, Joe, they were 6 of 8 on 3rd downs in the first half. And I just don't see how that team is capable of winning football games. I don't know any other way to say it. And I think you get to a point like last night. I did not think, again, Dak had a great game. Now, he was under a lot of pressure. Particularly late when they had to throw the ball. But I also feel like you're getting to that point, where the tipping point comes, where the offense starts to realize there's no amount of points that we can score that are going to allow us to win on a consistent basis. And that's kind of how it felt last night.
But Logan Wilson's coming. I mean, the help is on the way. This is going to be fixed. Logan Wilson from the Bengals, a linebacker. Now, Joe explained to us. First of all, explain us how Logan Wilson is going to work here. But secondly, explain to us this whole fiasco, and we'll talk about that in a minute, of Jerry announcing that deal, more or less, retracting the deal, more or less, and then finally coming up with it, which is just, Jerry speak. But tell us how Logan Wilson's going to factor into this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I even asked Jerry Jones this. I'll start a little bit with the fiasco of yesterday. I asked Jerry Jones, simply put, why would you announce a trade that didn't happen before it happened, before a game, before this? He didn't give me a good answer, frankly. And I think ultimately, yeah, shocking. I think ultimately what he did yesterday is a disservice to what he ended up actually doing. I think that Logan Wilson actually, as a trade acquisition for them, is a good move. I think what they did, giving up a 7th-round pick for a guy that you can control for multiple years, a guy who was a captain for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I know that he's had his playtime decrease recently. They ended up kind of going with another rookie linebacker ahead of him recently, but this is someone that still kind of has the pelts on the wall for them in Cincinnati. He's a captain. I think one of the biggest things the Cowboys have lost from last year is honestly some semblance of leadership and just some bite, like some overall professional kind of how-to-ness, because they lost a lot of leaders. DeMarcus Lawrence, I think Jordan Lewis is a loss that we're still seeing kind of the repercussions in terms of just a personality and culture thing for this defense. I think Logan Wilson's going to bring a little bit of those elements to this defense. I don't think he's going to be the incredible playmaker he was, having 11 interceptions in his first 4 seasons. But this is a guy that right now would lead the Cowboys in pass deflections, pass breakups at 4. Like this is a guy that I think is gonna come in, and the one thing he's not gonna do is he's not gonna miss assignments, he's not gonna miss gaps. I think he's gonna see scheme really well. He's gonna make his reads. And the other thing too is I think that this is one part of a linebacker overhaul they're about to have. I think their starting linebackers against the Las Vegas Raiders the next time they play after this bye are going to be Logan Wilson and DeMarvion Overshown. I think that's a huge upgrade, frankly, from where they were with Shamar James and Kenneth Murray, on Monday night. So I think the move is actually really good. I think Jerry Jones did an absolute disservice to that move by building it up like he did, kind of in the sake of being in the spotlight for 24 hours before the deadline. Evan was there too. The amount of just word salad that we had last night, I think I can go on a diet now, because it was incredible just to see how Jerry kind of spun these things, did not answer questions. And ultimately, he even was honest with us. I'm talking in circles to you guys right now. And that's exactly what it felt like.
For sure, he knows that he's doing that. But I will say this. I can remember back in, just real quick, back in the 90s, I was interviewing Jerry for a story of some type, and just me and him in his office. And he's walking around the room and talking to me, and it is just nonsense. But at that point, I don't think it was intentional nonsense. And at one point, he asked me, "How does this sound?" And I said, "It doesn't sound like anything, Jerry. It just you haven't said anything." And I kind of even felt sorry for him back then. He has now perfected that as an art form. When he doesn't really have anything to say or want to say, he can't just say that. He can't say, "Well, I can't tell you that. No comment." He is just not predisposed to do that. So he comes up with this mess instead. And in his mind, even though he is not a good communicator, he knows what he's doing when he's doing all this stuff. And that's really the unfortunate side of all of it.
Oh, I don't know about last night, because I think he got carried away with the whole Stephen A. circus and wanted to give Stephen something. And so he said, we had a trade. And I think what in fact had happened is the Cowboys and Bengals had conversations, had basically agreed this is what it would take to get Wilson. Let's sleep on it, and we'll come back tomorrow and file the paperwork. And then I think probably after the game, he had a moment of, do I really, even if this is an upgrade right now, do I really think this is going to help the team? And he had to try and back out of it. And it was again, I said to Joe that the one straight thing he said after 14 minutes of talk was that, yeah, I'm talking in circles to you guys, because he couldn't just explain it straight up. We've got a trade that we can make. We were going to sleep on it and come back tomorrow once we've had a little bit of a chance to digest all this. It was that simple. and he can't just say it that way. And I do think it all goes to this entertainment thing. He had Stephen A there. He was going to make the most of it. He wanted to give him something juicy that people would be talking about. So that's what he gave him. And I do agree with Joe. I think it does a disservice because now, unless you go out and trade for the biggest name in the game, it looks like the trade loses all its juice. I mean, in the public domain.
Yeah, no
Well,
doubt.
I mean, I think that's all part of the deal you just talked about. Is that Logan Wilson's a nice addition, but it's not what the Eagles are doing. And the Eagles go out and have made 3 deals, including bringing a really nice edge rusher and Jalen Phillips from the Dolphins. That's a much bigger impact. That's a former first round pick than what Logan Wilson is. So, but Jerry can't miss the opportunity to make news and to try to, because he is P.T. Barnum. So let me ask you this. So let's float this proposition, because I'm tired of just talking about how bad the Cowboys are, because they are really bad. And this is a team that at this point at 3-5-1 is, even if I was counting this when I said the Cowboys would finish the back half of the season 5-4, I was counting that as a win, the Cardinals. So now I got them at 4-5-1, and I'm not even really feeling good about that, especially after losing to Arizona. So this is a team that should be planning on trying to tank at this point, and of course he won't do that, but that's what it should do, and trying to get the best pick possible here. But I want to talk about this, Joe. Explain to our listeners a little bit about the process here with Jerry as the GM and owner. I mean, everybody was upset last week when he talked about exploring gas fields, $100 million deals, and he'd rather talk about that than fixing his defense. I think that is my theory on Jerry has always been, yes, he cares about making money, but winning makes him money. The 2 things that drive him in my mind are, 1, he wants to prove he can win a Super Bowl, win a Lombardi trophy that doesn't have Jimmy's fingerprints all over it. And 2, if you believe that he's all about making money, you have to understand that, winning makes him money. If the team is good, he's going to make more money than he is if the team is bad. So it's counterproductive to say he doesn't care about winning. He does care about winning. He cares about a lot of things, much like Mark Cuban, who ended up, before he finally sold the team, venturing out into a million different things and not spending as much time around the organization, which was actually a good thing, for at least for a while. So tell us how much you think that Jerry is really involved in the day-to-day running of the team, and how much impact he actually has on that, and or if it's more of a process of, this is the framework that Jerry has. These are the things that we know he wants, and this is how he does business. And therefore, maybe people like Will McClay are just boxed in.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say, it kind of goes back almost to the Logan Wilson point too, is I think Jerry Jones also does himself a disservice by talking about, and is talking as much as he does about all these things, because I do think he wants to win. I genuinely think that is something that he wants to pursue. I think he's passionate about it. You talk to people around him and they'll say the same thing. But I think when you kind of wrap yourself around these other things, when you're having conversations with the Wall Street Journal and poking fun about the idea of improving your defense and kind of feeding the narrative to fans that think they care more about this team than you, like that's kind of the aura that you're going to represent and you're going to put out there. So like, I think that the more he talks about it, the bigger of a disservice he does to his overall mission. I will say, in terms of where they're at from a day-to-day perspective, Jerry Jones, I think one thing he'll do is he'll ask feedback from a lot of people. And I think that he does have trust in a lot of people higher up with the Cowboys to kind of make things happen, right? I think Will McClay has a prominent role. I think obviously Steven has a prominent role. When it comes to making deals like this, I don't think this was Jerry Jones last night saying, oh, shoot, I said, let's make a trade. How about Cincinnati, Logan Wilson, 7th rounder? Like, I think that this is Jerry Jones kind of using the feedback from a lot of different people, using the recommendations that are kind of given to him from a lot of different people, and moving forward. Like I've talked about this before, Kevin. I think if Jerry Jones really, truly had it his way this offseason, they would have gone and hired Deion Sanders. If this was a true, like, just one-person operation where there was no other feedback and he can kind of just say, you know what, I hear everything you're saying, but I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go hire Deion. Like, I think that that's something that he probably would have done to be honest with you, even with the buyout and stuff like that being a factor. I think that the recommendation for Brian Schottenheimer came from other people, right? And I think that once these recommendations get up to the higher level with Jerry Jones, including trades and other day-to-day things, I think that's when decisions are made, frankly. So I think that this isn't just a one-man operation with Jerry Jones, but I do think Jerry Jones is trying to win, and I think that he does himself a disservice in terms of his image based on how he kind of talks about it.
Yeah. Well, there's no question about that. He's his own worst enemy. But there's also a part of it too that it's what makes it watchable, right? I mean, who would care about a 3-5-1 team otherwise than the fact that it's being run by Jerry Jones? I mean, it's drawing eyeballs. I'm sure that, when it turned out the season that started the way it did, and you look at Monday Night Football, and this is going to be Arizona and Dallas, really? 2 losing teams? And if you had known going into that this is what it was going to be, you would have said, ugh. But instead, they still got something to talk about because you got Jerry out there making, news and saying crazy things and drawing attention. And you can say all you want to about how crazy it all looks, but it draws eyeballs. And that's what Jerry wants too. That's I guess the third thing is that, the worst thing you can do to Jerry is ignore him. He wants to be the center of, I don't know that it's so much that he wants to be the center of attention. He wants his organization to be the center of attention. And he knows that he's the one who can do it. There was a time back in the 90s where the players did it and his coaches did it. And that's no longer the case anymore. He doesn't have those kind of players. To your point, Joe, I think you're absolutely right. I think he would have loved to have hired Deion because Deion draws eyeballs. He's a guy that raises your Q ratings. So that's what he would want to do. And I don't even know. Look, if you looked at it now, it doesn't look like such a good idea out there. Deion's not quite as good without Deion Jr. and without a
Travis Hunter.
winner. Yeah. So that's
I think there are 3 things that Jerry really cares about. He cares about winning, he cares about making money, and he cares about attention. I'm just not sure how I would categorize those 1, 2, 3. I think when I do look at those things 1, 2, 3, I know where winning ranks in what he knows about. It ranks last among those 3. He's a great showman. He's a great businessman. He's not a great winner when it comes to football. So we've only beaten this to death for the last 30 years as well, but it seems like he's more desperate for attention now. I if I'm trying to put this into perspective, I don't know. Yesterday was just such an unnecessary circus for no reason whatsoever. And it all just came crashing down with probably, would you say that was their worst loss of the season, right, Joe, of their 5? Given the opponent?
I think Denver last week was rough, to be honest. But I at least there was the guys that it was on the road and it was tough and a good team.
A good team.
Right? This is a game at home against a team that with a 2-5 record going
and a backup quarterback.
And man, they just get right against these Cowboys. One thing I'll say really quickly, just look at the scoreboard right now in terms of how the Cowboys operate versus their peers, right? I wrote this offseason. The Cowboys generated literal billions of free advertising in the way they handled the Micah Parsons negotiations. The Ravens, how they announced their starting extension with Kyle Hamilton right before waiver claim day at a press conference that wasn't even planned for that, right? It was just like, oh, by the way, we signed this guy. Look at what the Eagles did yesterday. They traded for Jalen Phillips, right? A very impactful trade for them that could help them in the long run. Howie Roseman had a statement about it. No press conference, nothing, right? The Cowboys, meanwhile, had a whole day of media attention dedicated to a trade that may or may not happen and ultimately resulted in a backup linebacker from the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL for a 7th round pick. But
when you've got a good product on the field, you want all the attention to go to that.
Yeah.
Well, most people do, but that's the difference between Jerry and everybody else. How many other organizations have an owner who's also the GM? I mean, this is what you get when you have Jerry Jones. And so
I was struck by one thing that just is stuck in my head. Though, we did see with about 4:45 left in the third quarter, some pretty heavy boos last night, a pretty good shower of boos. But then I watched the rest of the game, and certainly in the fourth quarter, there were people emptying out. It's a Monday night game and all that, and they're losing. But I keep seeing people on the screen, and boy, everybody is just happy and excited. And that's okay. If people want to go to the football games and they're entertained and they're having a good time, that's great. It's just not a good product on the field. But I don't know. I don't know what the average fan. I think there's a level of frustration with this team, but I keep looking at people who go to the games and they're happy.
Well, they're happy to get themselves on the Godzillatron. That's the deal, and that's another story. But one of the things I always said about that big screen was that why aren't they putting stats on there? Wouldn't that be great to put things on there and let the fans look at that? And no, and I think the reason is because Jerry doesn't, especially if they're losing, you don't want to see those stats up there. But people get to see themselves on this humongous screen.
Yeah, and stats on that, I would not be for stats on that big screen.
Oh, I think it'd be great. But look, here's the thing. Why show people jumping up and down and yelling and screaming? I mean, what's the purpose of that? Other than
because you're selling, it's just fun to be out at the old football game.
That's what they're trying to do anyway. All right, that's going to do it for the Cowboys segment of this podcast. You could go on and on and on talking about this team. What a bunch of
and that's what Jerry wants.
Well, that's absolutely right. As long as you're talking about them, that's all that matters. Joe, we appreciate it, man. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, we'll see if they make any other trades the rest of the day, huh?
Yeah. That'll fix it. That's for sure. Well, Evan, we have been shed of pretty much any last vestige of former administrations out there with the Rangers. Starting with the fact that Mike Maddux is gone, Tony Beasley is gone, everybody else is gone. Well, I guess Corey Ragsdale is still around. The first base coach has now moved to third base, right?
Right. I think Jordan Teagues, who came up through the minor league system, is going to have a significant role in the pitching staff. Luis Ureta, who was there last year as a bench coach, will return. And I think a couple of the other support staff members like Seth Connor and Brett Hayes, who were valuable, but didn't have really high profiles, will also return. And then the biggest situation will be that Justin Veely will move into the lead hitting instructor after basically being supplemental or secondary to Donnie Ecker at the start of the year, and then serving in a secondary role, at least profile-wise, to Brett Boone, because it's impossible to have a bigger profile than Brett Boone for the remainder of the year. So I think this will be a melding of some of Skip Schumacher's guys. I think it will also encompass some of the people who were here. And I think in all, I think it makes sense that, you give people the opportunity who deserve opportunities. I think you also want to give the manager some of the people that he feels most comfortable or trusts the most. And I think you also want to look at some guys that neither you nor the manager knows. So I don't have a problem with where things have gone with the Rangers. I know there's been a lot of pushback on Mike Maddux, and listen, I think this is one situation where just certainly things didn't line up. And I tried to explain this a little bit in a column yesterday, in which I also mentioned that Colby Lewis will not return in a special assistant role, which I think is just a penny pinching move, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. I think Mike wanted and deserved some love for what the starting rotation did this year. I think the Rangers wanted and needed to give Skip Schumacher some time to get his hands around everything in constructing this pitching staff. And I think when you got that to that point, it became maybe a little personal to Mike that he wasn't as warmly or as aggressively pursued from the outset of the offseason as he would have liked to have been. And maybe the Rangers didn't have the ability to so sweeten the deal financially or in any other ways to keep Mike from being, Mike's got some pretty rigid traits. And if he felt like he was offended or not loved, I could see him saying, well, I'll go to the Angels and I'll take a big fat raise this year and I'll do 1 year and then I'll decide if I want to walk away, because he was going to walk away after the 2022 season when he left the Cardinals. It only was serendipitous that the Rangers had an opening, and Bruce Bochy, an old school guy like Mike, came in here, and Mike is a resident. It just was a perfect situation for him. This may just be 1 year, and then he walks away.
Yeah, I get all that, Evan, but the optics of this are not good. Because let's go back and look at this from the standpoint. First of all, the best manager and the only one who's ever won a World Series is out the door, and he wanted to come back. I have to believe that Mike Maddux would much rather be the pitching coach here than for the Los Angeles Angels. 2 and 3, pitching is the only thing that worked this year, and whether anybody wants to give Mike 75% of the credit, 50%, 25%. The Justin Beasley was here for the worst offense in the history of baseball, and he's back as the hitting coach. So that's when we talk about wanting to give the new manager the license to hire the guys he wants. I get all that, absolutely. But why is it that the pitching coach is leaving? It was something that really went well, and the one thing that went really poorly is going to be in the hands of the same guy. See, I don't.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on the optics. I think that the optics don't look good. Like I say, I think if you look a little bit deeper, there's some rational reasons why it didn't line up, but the optics certainly don't look good. As far as Justin Beasley goes, I guess he's guilty by association, but I don't know how much authority he really ever had last year with Donnie's presence and then with Brett's presence. And I think if you're going to say that the Rangers had some really good pitchers in Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom, and that certainly helped. That the talent helped the pitching staff succeed. You also have to acknowledge that the talent or the lack thereof on the offensive side contributed to that. It was beyond the coach's grasp. Marcus Semien, Jonah Heim, and Adolis Garcia all had continued drop-offs. And so
I agree with all that, Evan, and that's for sure.
But there's no dispute that the optics are bad. I mean, the optics is bad,
but also, don't we think the game plan was bad on offense too? I mean, when it kept being, we're going to slug, and then you look at what these teams did, like in the playoffs, and you look in the World Series, and you see people bunting, and you see people moving people over, and you see people making contact. And that's the plan. It was a bad plan, and I fell right along with it because it worked in 2023, and so I'm fine with that. But then all of a sudden we find out this season, the ballpark doesn't really play like that anymore.
Well, I mean, the ballpark thing, I think you couldn't really you really didn't have enough data until the second season. But on the approach, listen, I mean, they just had a bad approach. There's no doubt about it. And it's great to slug. Look, the World Series turned on a number of home runs. Home runs are important. It's important to be able to hit home runs. But this team never had a team-centric approach. From 1 through 9, this did not function as a team, and that is something that's got to change. And again, I think that's something that Skip is going to stress. And, his and I asked him about this the other day is the acronym that he gave everybody, the CAPE, communication, alignment, performance, preparation, and execution. I asked him where he came up with that, and I said, "Did you read it in a business book somewhere?" He said, "No, I kind of came up with it on my own." But I think the important one there that differs from maybe other things that we hear is the alignment purport of it, and that is, I'm going to communicate to my coaches exactly what I want, and we're going to get in alignment one way or another on what we want to say to these hitters, and that's going to be stressed. So,
all right, very good. Well, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. We're going to move over now and talk to Lia Assimakopoulos. And she is here. Lia wears a lot of hats for us, as we know. She wears the Stars hat. She wears the SMU hat. She does arena hats. Lia, how many hats do you have anyway?
Yeah, they keep me busy. It depends on the day.
Yeah, it just depends on what it is. All right, very good. Uh, so, Lia, do we? First of all, let's talk about the star situation and the arena and all of that. Give us a little bit of an update now. This has obviously been a very big story here the last couple of weeks. The feud between the Stars and the Mavericks, and now the Stars are suing the Mavericks, and all kinds of stuff going on. And then of course there's the announcement, Sunday that they're going to play that Winter Classic out at Jerry World in 2027. It's a little bit of everything, but let's start with if there's any updates on the legal ramifications between the Stars and the Mavs.
Yeah, so the NHL commissioner, Gary Bettman, was in Arlington yesterday for that announcement about the Stadium Series game, and we got to talk to him a little bit about this ongoing feud between the Stars and the Mavericks. And I think it's kind of important to note that before Gary Bettman was commissioner of the NHL, he was third in command at the NBA for about a decade. So he has experience with both leagues. And he slammed the Mavs pretty good, called the lawsuit frivolous, said he thought there was really no, it was completely unwarranted, and certainly took the Stars side. And then he made a little bit of an announcement saying that he said the injunction had been vacated. And we spoke with the legal counsels for the Stars and the Mavs last night, and essentially learned that what he meant by that is there was essentially a temporary order that the Mavericks had requested to pretty much revoke the Stars' control of Center Operating Company, the company that controls American Airlines Center, while this before the trial and while this legal process was playing out. And the Mavericks and the Stars were able to come to an agreement on bonuses for arena employees. And when that happened, the Mavericks decided to drop that one request. So essentially, a piece of the lawsuit, or a piece of the legal filing, which was this injunction, was thrown out yesterday. But the lawsuit still very much stands. They still plan to either reach a settlement or go to trial. It almost seemed like what the commissioner was implying was that maybe this was being resolved and the Mavericks had stepped down, and that's really not what happened here. So we have heard that the trial is going to be in January, and they're kind of full steam ahead. Both parties still think that they are in the right here, and a judge might, or a jury might have to decide that.
How crazy is all of this? I mean, it's a little bit hard to believe. The Mavericks and Stars always kind of had a little bit of a fitful relationship. It was never just lovey-dovey, but things have they've been able to do that, and give us a little perspective nationally, because I think it's important to know how many franchises or how many cities actually have joint operating agreements there, or where the NBA team and the NHL team are co-tenants of the same building. I think there's only
Yeah.
10, right?
Yeah, it's about a dozen. It's 10 or 11, something like that. But most of those share an ownership group. So it's a little different when, you've got, like, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and the same person that owns the Capitals owns the Wizards. So there's no, it's not the same two owners going head to head like what we have here. So I think there are only 5 or so that share a building but don't share ownership. So the Stars and the Mavs are obviously one of them. But most of those agreements and most of those arenas were set not in this century. So it's only Detroit and Dallas that they built a new arena and reached an agreement since the turn of the century. So it seems like any new building that's being built in the last 15 years or so has been hockey only or basketball only. So that's really the trend. And it seems like these teams are kind of splitting nationwide, and it's not all that surprising that the same thing's happening here. But yes, it doesn't seem like the other franchises in other cities have been able to make it work a lot better than what seems to be happening between the Stars and Mavs. It's definitely a little more hostile than I think we expected.
I have one question for both of you. And as somebody who grew up in Atlanta where we can't keep a hockey team, and somebody who grew up in the state of Georgia where my education may not be all that great, here's all I want to know is, What exactly are the Mavericks trying to get out of this situation?
That's a great question. Our understanding, or at least the Stars' understanding, is the Mavericks want to still have control of American Airlines Center, and they want to still go build their new arena. So the Mavericks want to leave in 2031 and build their basketball-only arena, but they feel that because the Stars are in violation of this franchise agreement, that they should have reached a deal with the city where they can essentially maintain control over their old arena, get the revenue from that arena, but then also build their new one. So, and the
And
Star,
it sounds like, does it also sound like the second piece of that is they're trying to force the Stars into that longer term rental agreement so that they
yes,
become a full-time tenant? I mean,
yes.
that would be the punitive play here, right?
Yes, and the word tenant has been thrown out a lot, and not even just now. We were told that that's been kind of a topic even when the Mavericks were talking about leaving, and maybe the Stars join them as a tenant. So yes, it's been quite some time that it seems like the Mavericks want to do what they can to make the Stars their tenant, and feel that they are entitled to that because they bring in more revenue.
And block them from building their own arena.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really ugly, isn't it? But I don't know why we wouldn't have expected this. And of course, I can go back to I was out there at the arena, the Mavs game, when the announcement came about the sale, and that was just also surreal, all of it. And in my mind, the fact that Mark Cuban had sold the Mavs was just unbelievable to me. And yet he obviously misunderstood all the implications of it and what it meant. And he was telling everybody, "Oh, I will remain the governor. I'll still be in charge of basketball."
Hmm.
And of course, I sent him a text or an email saying, "When did you realize you would no longer have a say in how to run the Mavs?" And he responded, "This is one of the best parts about this. Is I won't have to deal with you anymore." So anyway, it was just amazing to think that these people from Las Vegas are not going to come in here and make a play. Look, they're pouring millions of dollars into campaigns across the state trying to get this overturned, the ban on casino gambling, and you can't expect them to do all that and think they were just going to come in here and sit around and watch basketball. You know, this is all a real estate play for them. This is all like a gambling play for them.
It's a real estate and gambling play, right? And if they can get the foothold for gambling in Dallas first, they can potentially control the whole state if
Oh,
gambling ever comes in.
you think about that. This is other than California. Where would you want to go? You want to go to Texas because all the gambling interests are in Louisiana and Oklahoma, and that's where everybody has gone. If you can
And
control that here, that's it's like the final frontier. So
and
it's
this is what happens when you get in bed with people whose fortune is built on gambling. They are cutthroat.
yeah.
They are not local. They do not care about the local franchise or the local or local relationships. They care about real estate and gambling, and maybe in the inverse order.
Yeah, no question about that. Leah, let's before we get out here, I want us to talk a little bit about, because you and I were both out there at the Hilltop on Saturday.
That was a great picture of you, Kevin, carrying off the goalpost. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah, that was me hanging off the crossbar, going across like that. It was really good. I even looked like I had hair. That was a remarkable win to come back and do that. And of course, Evan can kind of he gets it when Carson Beck makes a throw he shouldn't make, and Ahmad Moses got the interception. But I will say this: and Ahmad said after the game, I was surprised that he threw it. It's like, well, it is Carson Beck, but Ahmad Moses is a very good player, and he had great coverage on that play, and also, of course, had an interception earlier in the game. But that I got it. I had to tell you, I got an email from Lance McElhenney after the game, and talking about just how unbelievable it was in the experience of it. I'm even thinking about writing something about it. I'll have to talk to Lance, but it was just so great. He was talking about his brother was there, and his brother was crying, and they were talking about their parents, and because his dad, of course, was an NFL player, and his brother also played, and he said, what would our parents think about this, and he talked about how his son went to Texas Tech, but he was still excited, and he said he couldn't believe that Miami's in here, and this is kind of just isn't all of this just a kind of an affirmation of what SMU did, A, by going to the ACC, and then B, by putting all this money into everything that they've done. And as one booster told me, we finally feel like a D1 big time program again.
Yeah. I mean, that was just watching the field storm, the aftermath, like even just in the game itself. I mean, that felt like a big time power conference program game. And I think Rhett Lashley, we were just in his press conference, he just said that he's never seen Ford Stadium like that at 11 a.m. on a Saturday. I mean, maybe for a night game, but yeah, it was exactly like you said, what SMU invested to do to get a moment like that. And they obviously capitalize, and you beat a top 10 team, and it's your biggest win at that stadium ever. So yes, I mean, it was a lot more than just a big win for the season and to keep their ACC title game hopes alive, but I think it affirmed a lot of things. And this season for SMU has been a big question mark. I mean, they have that great year last year. They go to the playoff. They lose to TCU and Baylor. They have a ton of injuries. It's a question of were they a one-hit wonder, but I think that, that win shows that, they deserve to be in the ACC. It was worth the investment, and they have a chance to go back to Charlotte, and teams like Clemson and Miami and Florida State don't now. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, you think about the fact that everybody made fun. I made fun of it a little bit. When the announcement was made about going to the ACC, you're just foregoing the 9 years of revenues, right? And everybody said, "Look, they just bought their way in," and no one took them seriously. I can't believe that anybody looked at that situation and said, "Oh, SMU won't matter in the ACC." They just bought their way in. They're just going to be glad to say they're in there, right?
Right.
And now they go in, and they've after 2 seasons in, they've lost. The Wake Forest loss, that was really bad, Leah. I think where this program would be had they won that game, as they should have. Now, Wake Forest is better this year. There's no question about that, but it's still Wake Forest. You can't lose to them. But still, so now this sets up the Louisville game, right? And I don't want to jump ahead here too far, but I don't have to do what coaches do. I don't have to take on one game at a time. That certainly sets up, and I'll be interested to see how many fans show up for that. Because
for Louisville?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about this Miami win, right? Was that it gave they get to do it all over again. They created a home atmosphere in this Miami game, and now they've got Louisville. Louisville's 2 weeks from now.
Yes.
22nd, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And they get 2 weeks from now, they get to go and do it all over again. And that's the kind of thing that you need to have to build that real atmosphere on campus. So it was a great win for SMU. It was great to see just from afar the atmosphere that they created. And look, they are a legitimate player in the ACC. And that is the thing. I think, Kevin, you and I talked about this when it first happened. Like, could they ever be a real player in the ACC? Well, yeah, they are, and they're doing it now. Whether or not they win this year, they have been a legitimate player and a legitimate disruptor for back-to-back years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they're going to get in this year. It's going to be really hard. They got to have a little luck here. Virginia's got to lose to somebody, and but still, yes, you're right, Evan. Getting here to this point, having this much success, beating a top 10 program for the first time since the '83 Cotton Bowl, and the first time at a home game since 1974. Those are the kind of things that people remember and talk about. In some ways, you can't collapse at this point, obviously, but in some ways, I think that most SMU fans would tell you this was good enough. Don't you think, Leah?
I mean, I think yes. I think the standard is a lot higher, but yes, I agree. I mean, I think that SMU fans kind of know at this point that it is a stretch to do what they did last year to go back to the college football playoff. I think that this win is a win that can kind of define the season and something that they'll take away. And yeah, obviously, you hope a Georgia Tech team can lose if you're an SMU fan. You hope that there's still a chance, but I think they exactly what Evan said. They proved that they are a disruptor in the ACC, and I think 2 years into their time in the conference, that's really all that SMU fans can ask for.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, to sum it up again, I mean, it feels like they are stacking up legitimate building blocks after really after 30 years, they are finally stacking up legitimate building blocks to a real powerhouse program. Big wins, atmosphere, legitimate conference. It's not just, I think when you said they're buying their way in, Kevin, we all thought they'd go to the ACC, they'd get run over. They have not gotten run over.
No, they have not. All right, that's going to do it for our podcast this week. We appreciate you popping in with us. We'll be back next week to talk more about what's going on and see if Jerry's done anything else crazy, which obviously, yes, he will have done. I'm making that prediction right now.
He can't do anything crazy this week. They're off. They're off.
He do something great. You can't against Jerry Jones. He doesn't abide by everybody else's calendar, certainly not the NFL. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.